Okay, so we all talk to our smart speakers, right? Alexa, Google, Siri, they're part of the furniture now. But have you ever stopped to think about how they talk back to us? Because that one little detail can make or break the whole experience. Today, we're diving into the surprising science of why the way your voice assistant speaks matters way more than you probably think. You know what I'm talking about? You ask Alexa to reorder your favorite coffee pods, and it feels like magic. It's seamless, it's fast, it's the future. But then you ask for help finding a new pair of headphones, and suddenly the whole thing just feels weird, clunky, almost frustrating. So what gives? Why is it sometimes amazing and other times just off? Well, there's a very specific reason for that, and it's not a bug.
All right, so let's get into it. Voice assistants are a massive part of how we shop these days. I mean, they're this new frontier that promises to make everything easier. But as we've all felt, there's a serious disconnect sometimes. And this is not a small problem we're talking about, because the scale of voice commerce is already huge and it's getting bigger.
Get this, 28.7%. That's the predicted annual revenue growth for voice shopping every single year. This isn't some niche little gadget anymore. It's a massive commercial force. And you better believe companies are betting big that we're all going to be doing a lot more shopping just by talking.
And this right here, this is the heart of the issue. A quick voice command? Yeah, it's perfect for a simple reorder. But when you're trying to discover something new, just hearing a description often doesn't cut it, right? This is the exact puzzle that researchers were like, okay, we got to solve this. When should a voice assistant just talk, and when does it need to shut up and show us something too?
To really get why voice shopping feels so hit or miss, we have to look at this core idea from marketing science, which is that, well, not all purchases are the same. In fact, our brains are wired to handle them in two very, very different ways.
On one side, you've got your low-involvement purchases. These are simple, routine, low-risk buys. Think restocking paper towels or buying that same old brand of toothpaste. It's stuff we do on autopilot mode. But on the other side, you've got the big decisions. These are the complex, higher-risk choices that force our brains into deep thinking mode. You know, like buying a new laptop or maybe picking out a new book you hope you'll love.
And this brings us to the million-dollar question for the researchers. They weren't just trying to see if there's a difference. They wanted to find the perfect recipe. How should the format, whether it's voice or visual or both, change to perfectly match the way our brain is already set up to make these completely different kinds of decisions?
So how in the world do you test something like this? Well, you get creative and you design an experiment. Researchers set up a scenario to see exactly how real people who use voice assistants all the time, would react when they were asked to make these two very different types of purchases.
So here's the setup. They got 343 people who are already experienced voice assistant users, and they split them up. One group got product information using only a voice. The second group got only visuals, like you'd see on a website. And the third group got the full smart display experience, both voice and visuals working together. The whole point? To see which one of these formats actually builds the most trust. And these were the products they used to test it. For that low-involvement autopilot purchase, they went with a simple 100-page notebook. It's functional, it's something you buy pretty often. But for the high-involvement, deep thinking purchase, they chose a thrilling fiction novel. This is a much more complex choice. You're not just buying an object, you're buying an experience, and you want to be sure it's going to be a good one.
All right, the stage is set. We've got the products, we've got the different ways of presenting them. So what happened? What do we actually prefer? Which approach earned people's trusts and made them want to click buy? The results are really interesting. First up, let's look at the simple, low-involvement purchase, that notebook. You need to restock it, you don't want to overthink it, you just want the task done. So how did people feel about how they got the information? The voice-only format won, and not just by a little, by a lot. It turns out, when a purchase is simple, we trust a voice assistant the most when it just tells us what to get. It's fast, it's effortless, and it perfectly matches our brain's autopilot mode. We don't want the extra info from visuals, we just want a quick, trusted shortcut to get the job done.
Okay, fine. But what happens when the stakes get a little higher? What happens when we switch from that boring, functional notebook to choosing a novel, a product we actually need to feel confident we're going to enjoy?
The results completely flipped. It was like night and day. For the complex decision of picking a novel, voice only tanked. It was the least trusted format. The clear winner? The combination of both voice and visuals. When the decision matters more, we want to hear a recommendation, sure, but we also need to see the proof. See the cover, read the summary, check the ratings. That multi-sensory combo is what builds trust when our brain is in that deep thinking mode.
So now we know what we prefer. But the really cool part is digging into the why. Because this isn't just some random preference people have. It's actually rooted in some pretty deep psychology about how our brains process information and, kind of weirdly, how we talk to computers.
So it all starts with this principle called the CASA paradigm. It stands for computers are social actors. And what it means basically is that when a computer talks to us, our brain kind of short circuits and treats it like a person. So for that simple notebook purchase, the voice acts like a social shortcut. It's like a helpful store clerk pointing you to the right aisle. It feels human, it saves us brain power, and boom, we trust it.
But for that complex novel purchase, a whole other principle takes over: dual coding theory. Now, this is the idea that our brains have two separate, distinct channels for taking in information, one for words and one for images. So when you engage both of those channels at the same time, hearing the plot summary while you're seeing the book cover, you create a much richer, more detailed picture in your mind. And it's that deeper level of processing that builds the confidence and trust we need to make a more complex choice. So what you end up with is this really clear, kind of beautiful formula for building trust. Step 1. Match the format to the type of product. When you do that, it builds our sense of trust and usefulness in the assistant. And that feeling of trust is the final step that makes us actually want to use the assistant and ultimately buy the product. It's a chain reaction.
So what does all of this mean for the future of how we shop? Well, these findings have huge practical implications for any company that wants to use AI to talk to its customers. It's not just about having a voice assistant anymore. It's about making that assistant smart enough to know how to talk to us and when.
So, when you boil it all down, the takeaways are crystal clear. For any business out there, one size does not fit all. You've got to use voice only for those simple, quick reorders where speed is key. But you have to use voice and visuals for those complex, new discoveries where you need to build confidence. The real goal is to build trust by matching the tool to the task. And the next level of this? Well, that's adapting not just to the product, but to you, the individual user, your accent, your preferences, your unique way of talking.
And this leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to chew on. We know that right now, visuals are critical for complex decisions. But as AI voices get more and more human, more expressive, more convincing, will that need for visual proof start to fade away? Could you one day trust an AI's recommendations so completely that you'd be willing to buy something complex, sight unseen? The answer to that is going to shape the entire future of shopping.